Hey, it's Amy Newmark. I'm off this week for Thanksgiving, so I've chosen a week's worth of my favorite episodes for you from last fall. They're all about family and counting your blessings and Thanksgiving. So I'll be back next week to share some more wonderful holiday stories with you.
Changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your daily dose of Chicken Soup for the Soul inspiration to make you simply happy. It's Thoughtful Thursday, and I want to talk about a woman who was at the end of her rope, but decided that Thanksgiving was so important that she would hold it anyway, and it turned out to be a wonderful decision on her part. That woman is Jody Renee Thomas, and she wrote this story, appropriately enough, for our book about the power of gratitude. Jody tells us that it was 2 days before Thanksgiving when her electricity shut off. She had heard this clicking sound before, and she knew what it meant. She hadn't paid the bill, and the electric company had shut her off. She poured herself a drink, and she sat down to wallow in her misery. She had been unemployed for months, and she and her daughter were barely surviving. Jody grabbed her purse. She looked inside to see if any money had miraculously appeared in there. And this is crazy, but it had been so long since she had used the purse that, believe it or not, when she picked it up, moths flew out of it. Jody felt like she had failed as a mother. How would she explain this to her daughter? They were months behind on the rent, to the point that they were getting eviction notices, and now they had no electricity for lights or heat, and it was November. Jody couldn't help but get angry because she thought about all the people who she had helped over the past years, people like her who were down in their luck and needed a place to stay. And she started reviewing her list, and she stopped counting when she got to 50 people who had stayed in her house, sleeping on her couch. She was beside herself. She had helped all of those people, and no one was helping her. And then her daughter came home from school, saw that the electricity was off, and said, "Mom, are we poor?" And Jody could only choke out her answer, only financially, as she tried not to cry. Then Jody had a burst of energy. She decided that somehow she would make one last Thanksgiving for her daughter in their home before they were evicted. Thanksgiving was actually very important to Jody because she had grown up in a house that didn't celebrate Thanksgiving because of some stupid family feud. So as an adult, she had decided to invite anyone who needed a place to go, and she called her annual dinners the Orphan Thanksgiving. Over the years, Thanksgiving had become her favorite holiday, and this was supposed to be the year when she would hold her 15th Orphan Thanksgiving. So Jody decided that she was on a mission. She would call in some favors, and she would have one more Orphan Thanksgiving in her home, even without electricity. She got the people next door to throw an extension cord over the back fence so that she could charge her phone and her computer. She gathered some candles, and a friend who lived down the street, who was going out of town for the weekend, gave Jody a key so that she could go in and use the friend's kitchen and use her stove and oven. So all that was left for Jody to do was to find the money to buy the food for her Orphan Thanksgiving meal. That night, Jody sat in her candlelit bedroom. Her daughter was sleeping next to her, and she looked at her grandmother's gold locket. Her grandmother was the one who had taught her to cook, and she had grown up during the Depression and had told Jody many stories about people living through hard times. And Jody decided that her grandmother would approve of what she was going to do with this gold locket she had inherited from her. Jody would sell the gold locket to buy the food for one last Thanksgiving dinner before she and her daughter were evicted. And Jody pulled it off. She had the best turnout she ever had for her Orphan Thanksgiving. And everyone had a great time despite the lack of heat and the lack of electricity and lights. The next morning, after Thanksgiving, once it was light enough for Jody to see, She started cleaning up, and she tripped over a suitcase that she hadn't noticed the night before when it was dark. It was sitting on the living room floor, and on the top of it, it said, "Thanks for the giving." And inside the suitcase were cards, notes, and all kinds of encouragement from everyone who had come the previous evening. Plus, somehow, they had gotten notes from all these other people who Jody hadn't heard from in years, but many of them were among those 50 people who had slept on her couch and enjoyed her hospitality during their own hard times. And along with all of the encouraging notes was money, a lot of money. In fact, it was enough money for Jody to turn her electricity back on and to pay enough of her back rent to avoid being evicted. 5 years have now passed since that orphan Thanksgiving, and Jody and her daughter still live in the same house, but now with Jody's new husband. And they're still hosting their orphan Thanksgiving every year, and they're still marveling at the fact that sometimes the good deeds that you do for others do come back to you when you least expect it, but when you most need it. I'm Amy Newmark. Thank you for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. That story was called Thanks for the Giving, and it was published in our new book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Power of Gratitude. You can read more about that on our website, chickensoup.com. Now, tomorrow is Friend Friday, and I'm going to introduce you to a matter-of-fact, pragmatic, very helpful psychiatrist named Dr. Gail Saltz. We're going to talk about toxic people and why you should remove them from your life. And then we're going to tell you how, just in time for the holidays.